The night drones changed the war. The attack that caught Russia by surprise. In the early hours of May 24, 2025, the eerie silence over the Russian-occupied region of Zaporizhzhia was shattered by two small points of light streaking across the sky. These were Ukrainian drones on a surgically precise mission. Ukraine not only knew where and when to strike, it knew exactly how. Below them, running along the steel rails that snaked through a war-ravaged landscape, was a Russian train carrying over 500 tons of fuel, enough to supply 2 entire battalions for a week, equipped with thermal sensors and high-resolution cameras. It was far from an ordinary drone. Though based on civilian models, like the DJI Mavic 3, Ukrainian modifications had turned it into a highly effective military reconnaissance tool. Its thermal sensor, capable of detecting even the slightest temperature variations, could pick up the engine heat of the locomotive in the cold night. Designed for one-way missions, these drones were true flying bombs. With 7-inch propellers and powerful motors, they could reach speeds over 140 kilometers per hour in terminal dives, maintaining stability even on impact. But that train would never reach its destination. They were streamed in real time to Ukrainian command centers located dozens of kilometers away, where operators monitored every movement of the train with sharp focus. That was more than enough to penetrate the fuel tank cars. Their equipment used frequency hopping technology, switching communication channels hundreds of times per second. The warhead pierced the steel shell and ignited the pressurized diesel fuel inside. The second drone moved in. Within seconds, a fireball engulfed the car. But it didn't stop there. The fusion of both blasts created an inferno visible for miles. The column of fire and smoke rose over 200 meters into the air. The convection currents generated by the heat were so strong they altered the microclimate around the blast zone, ignoring Russian jamming, switching automatically to an emergency frequency. The drone held its course. Its artificial intelligence, trained on thousands of images of Russian trains, selected the precise point of impact, and then it dove. What's truly impressive is how it was done. Instead of multi-million-dollar jets or long-range ballistic missiles, Ukraine used drones that cost a fraction of that, operated by specialists kilometers away. The rails twisted from the heat, turning into serpents of molten steel. Accessible technology, combined with human creativity and resilience, is changing the balance of power on the battlefield. Nations that once depended on expensive and complex weapons can now deal devastating blows with improvised but highly efficient tools. The wooden ties were consumed in the flames, and the remains of destroyed cars were scattered like fragments of a post-apocalyptic puzzle. That stretch of track was lost. Ventilation systems connecting the cars normally used to equalize pressure during loading now served as channels for the flames to spread. Ordinary people, living under occupation, anonymously contributed valuable information. Engineers adapted civilian technology for military purposes, and programmers created communication and tracking systems capable of withstanding the most sophisticated electronic warfare. This made any interference attempt nearly impossible. Additionally, the drones could automatically switch to inertial navigation, use internal sensors like gyroscopes, and upon detonation, the warhead released a jet of energy at over 9,000 meters per second, fast enough to vaporize the flammable contents in an instant. Initially guided by encrypted GPS and, in the final seconds, by an autonomous optical system, it locked onto the third car in the formation. That is, of course, if maintenance crews weren't hit by more attack switch, at that moment, was more than likely. Ukrainian operators were already analyzing data for the next target. Even with the train moving at about 11 meters per second, the tracking system kept the target perfectly centered. The operator, miles away, watched in real time through FPV goggles. But brute force wasn't what made these drones so dangerous. It was the intelligence on board. With a hybrid zoom of up to 56x and flawless visual stability, target identification was accurate down to the smallest detail. What seemed like just another logistical movement by the Russian war machine was about to turn into a strategic disaster. High-definition warfare. The all-seeing eye, a network of civilians living in occupied areas, armed only with cell phones, logged schedules, speeds, and movement patterns. That's how they discovered the gap. 15-minute window during which the train would be outside the coverage of Russian air defenses. It was the perfect moment, and they were ready. The attack began with a surveillance drone flying about 8 kilometers from the area. These images weren't just for observation. The perfect attack begins with obsessive preparation. This was no impromptu strike. Ukrainian intelligence had been tracking this specific train for over 72 hours. Ukraine didn't use large missiles or supersonic jets to carry out the attack. It used FPV technology in the service of lethality. Each attack drone carried a 2.6 kilograms warhead with a shaped charge capable of piercing 22 millimeters of hardened steel. As the Russians activated their electronic warfare systems, trying to jam GPS signals and drone communications, the Ukrainians already had a backup plan. The first drone began its descent. Impact surgical precision. Total devastation. At 2 hours 44 minutes and 30 seconds a.m. the drone struck the third tanker car directly. The explosion was immediate. The fire quickly reached the adjacent cars. The Russian train operator tried to brake, but it was already too late. The train came to a stop immobile and vulnerable. Approaching from the southeast flank, using the thick smoke as cover, it visually locked on to the sixth car still intact. The second strike was just as devastating as the first. Another 69 tons of fuel exploded. The railway burned with itself. The railway structure simply couldn't withstand it. Experts estimate it would take weeks of intense labor to restore that segment of railway. The new face of war. Intelligence, precision, and courage what makes this operation so impactful. Isn't just the practical result of destruction of hundreds of tons of fuel and the interruption of a vital supply route. More than that, the entire operation was built on a foundation of human and technological intelligence. The future is in the air. This attack wasn't just a Ukrainian victory, it was a demonstration of the future of modern warfare. And while Russia struggles to understand how a vital convoy was turned to ashes by drones nearly invisible to radar, Ukraine is already moving toward its next target. The war goes on. But now, the enemy might be flying 100 meters above, silently carrying a 2.6 kilogram warhead and a mission that can't be detected in time.